Good afternoon and welcome. We are looking forward to having a wonderful conversation with you this afternoon. And after we introduce ourselves and you introduce yourselves, please don't forget to introduce the star of the show, your teacher. My name is Tom Tinder, and I'm an attorney from Charleston, West Virginia.
Hi, my name is Manuel Caudillo, and I'm a senior advisor with the White House Hispanic Prosperity Initiative in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon. I'm Jen Howell. I'm the co-executive director of Virginia Civics, which is the home of the Virginia We the People program. I'm coming to you from 3 miles down the road from James Madison's Montpelier. So happy to be talking about Madison today.
Please introduce yourselves and your teacher.
Good afternoon. My name is Dylan McFarland.
I'm Audrey Spittler.
I'm Samantha Schrader.
I'm Trent George, and this is our teacher, Mr. Half.
Great. Okay, this is Unit 3, and today we're going to do question number 1. I'm going to read that question to you very quickly. In the Virginia plan, James Madison proposed proportional representation in both houses of Congress. The delegates rejected Madison's proposal in favor of the Great Compromise. What is the Great Compromise, and how was it justified? Do you think the founders' justification is acceptable today? Why or why not? What are the advantages and the disadvantages of equal representation in the Senate? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of changing the Senate to proportional representation? You may begin.
Representation took many forms in early America, starting with the Mayflower Compact, where the idea of consent of the government is first seen in the New World. Then, as America expands, the House of Burgesses and the Massachusetts General Assembly are formed. All of these systems then culminated to make system of representation we have today. The Great Compromise was an offer from Connecticut, and the compromise was trying to solve the problem of the larger states having more power than the smaller ones. The system they came up with included proportional representation of the larger states and equal representation of the smaller ones. This was justified because both sides were given enough power to be heard and to make a change. This ultimately was the goal of our government.
The Great Compromise led to multiple decisions for the future of our government. My colleagues and I agree the founders' justifications are still relevant in this day and age. The founders wanted our nation's people to have a voice and to be able to be heard in our republic. One form of representation, equal or proportional, would not be sufficient. In the Articles of Confederation, the framers tried for just equal representation in our country. In this case, the larger states' voices weren't being heard as they should. Proportionality had the smaller states feeling weak because the larger states had significantly more power. These concepts of power being balanced with population are still relevant. The framers knew that the country was going to continue to grow, so they made their system accordingly. The compromise made it so both large and small states were in agreement to join the Union.
The framers knew that in order for them to be one cohesive nation, all the states needed to feel like their voices were equally heard. As a part of the Great Compromise and as established in Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution, it was decided that each state would have 2 delegates in the Senate. There are both advantages and disadvantages to this system. Having equal representation allows states with small populations to have their voices and opinions heard. That helps keep things balanced and helps states with large populations from becoming too powerful. This idea of balance is still being challenged in the present day with the debate of giving Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico representation in Congress. Conversely, giving states with small populations the same influence as ones with large populations, such as California compared to Wyoming, could be seen as undemocratic. Because the two states' populations are so disproportionate, the perspective could be that residents of Wyoming have a higher level of representation than Californians do. However, if small states didn't have equal representation, they might feel as though their voice is being overshadowed by the larger states.
Proportional representation was designed with the ideology, with more people comes more opinions. This means that more people are needed to represent higher populated areas so that all opinions can be heard. I feel the disadvantages of proportional representation in the Senate haven't changed since the Virginia plan. Smaller states felt like they didn't have enough say then, and we might revert to that system if the Senate is changed to proportional. By having only proportional representation, this would give the large states unprecedented power that would be difficult to balance or nullify. The advantage of this, though, would be that minority opinions have more of a say in important matters because not all ideas would be funneled through two people. A real-world example of this more people, more power concept is the stock market, except instead of people, there are shares. There's an inherent power dynamic built into this system because people with all the shares in a company have all the power, meaning that with no shares or very little shares, you have no power. This is exactly what would happen if the Senate was changed to proportional representation, except on a massive country-sized level. As President Abraham Lincoln once said, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth." In our government system, this can only be maintained through representation, so it is crucial that it remains just. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We now have some questions for you. You talked about different opinions. In our country, we have two major political parties. Other countries have 3, 4, 5, 6 or more political parties with, I'm sure, different opinions. Should we have more than 2 political parties in the United States? Why or why not?
I think America has shifted to the 2 political party system because it allows for an easier split when elections are being done. Because when there's only 2 parties, one side will have the majority. Because in American history, we see when there's multiple parties and multiple candidates from each party, it's very difficult to have a clear winner because there's so many different candidates.
I would like to partially disagree with my colleague because I believe since there are more opinions in our country because more people are being educated nowadays, that there are more differences. And so I could see there becoming more different parties in the future.
I'll go with my next question here. We talked a little bit about it during your presentation. With regards to Senate and proportional representation. And so pretend you're in the driver's seat, that you have an opportunity to make or not make this change. And so love to hear your opinions on this. Should we change the Constitution to make representation in the Senate based on population? Why or why not?
Well, as we mentioned in our essay, I don't think that we should change the Senate to proportional representation because right now we still have the larger states with higher populated areas having more power because they have all of their House of Representative votes combined with their 2 Senate votes, meaning they still have more power than the smaller states. But because the Senate is the more powerful branch, smaller states like Wyoming or Rhode Island still have a voice because they have their 2 representatives in the Senate. So no, I do not think the Senate should be changed.
I would like to agree with my colleague that we should not change the way the Senate is set up because the larger states already, like he said, already overpower the smaller ones. So by changing it to proportional, then they would overpower it even more and they would feel like they have even less of a voice.
So being from one of the states kind of in the middle, right? You're not super small and you're not super big. How do you feel like the system that we have under the Great Compromise is working for you?
I feel in Indiana that we have a good amount of representation in the Senate and in the House because we have our population being balanced along with our 2 representatives or our 2 senators. So I feel that that's a good balance.
I think because we have the House based on population, it works for all sorts of sizes of states like Indiana because we have like my colleague said, we have our House votes and our Senate votes combined in the grand scheme of things to have a voice.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, there we go.
I wanted to ask you a a question. As you may be aware, Nebraska has just one unicameral legislature, just one body in their legislature, whereas other states have two bodies, a House and a Senate. Do you think that other states should follow Nebraska's lead and just have one body in their legislature? Why or why not?
I think when you only have, I think there's advantages to having one chamber and disadvantages, because I think you have the advantages of it just being one group of people that constantly meet together and can constantly share their ideas and represent their specific communities, where they don't have to necessarily conflict with the other chamber. But also when you have two chambers, it allows for even an even larger amount of representation for the people. So no, I do not think other states should be changed to a unicameral legislature within the state, because I think with the two chambers, it allows for even more representation.
Another question here. It's refers back to the question I asked earlier, and your response was about power. That the reason why we shouldn't give proportional to the Senate is because larger states would have more power. What do you mean by that? What do you mean that the states would have more power? What does that entail? Is there any, and if so, do you have an example of if that's happening now?
Can you please repeat the question?
No problem. In the response to my first question, you mentioned that if we go to a Senate based on population, the larger states would have more power over the smaller states. What do you mean by more power? Is there a specific example? What does that mean that they would have more power?
Well, so when a decision or a bill is passed through the Senate or the House of Representatives, obviously all the representatives vote on it, right? So if you had large states having only proportional representation, you'd have a very, very large number of representatives from large states and a very small amount from smaller states. So unless you were to have, so this would make it difficult for these smaller states to vote against the larger states, because they would have so many representatives compared to the very few number of small state representatives. So I guess you asked about power. This power comes from passing bills and whatnot through the Senate and House of Representatives.
So you quoted Lincoln in your opening of the people, by the people, for the people. Constitution starts with we the people. It is, sounds like, all about the people. So why are states so important in this discussion?
I believe that the states represent the people, and if you have just the people voting on opinions and decisions, then you don't get like that balance of the representatives hearing the people out.
I would say that people have so many different ideas that it would be hard to try to have everyone's voice be heard, because there's only like the House of Representation more, I feel like, helps with having like a collective amount of people being heard, instead of just having like a group of 20 people talking about something and then another group of 20 people talking about something else. So I feel like the House of Representation is almost like in the middle to help negotiate the things that are going to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Well done. We now have some comments for you. I want to commend you on your opening presentation. I really like that you gave us some historical background all the way back to the Mayflower Compact and the House of Burgesses and the Acts of Confederation and so forth. I thought you gave us some great examples. I like that example about the stock market. That was right on point. And you mentioned about Washington, D.C. I'll tell you, if we had any more time, I was going to ask you straight out whether you're in favor or not in favor of D.C. Getting statehood, because Emmanuel's very interested in your opinions on that one. And and I also liked how you had different opinions and gave us the contrasting views. I do want to emphasize one point, though, and that is, when we ask you the questions, our follow-up questions, there's no right or wrong answer to those questions. They're not trick questions. It's us asking for your opinion and for you to give us your opinion backed up upon all the knowledge and all the research that you have done. And so don't hesitate. You're not going to get marked down or anything for an answer as long as your answer is backed up by some amount of facts and information, and it's clear that you have that. So don't hesitate when a question is asked, and you'll notice almost all the questions we say why or why not, about this particular matter. And so that just gives you the opportunity of saying, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree, and this is why. So other than that, very small constructive comment. I want to commend you all for a fine presentation, and please stay involved as you have shown with being involved in this We the People program. After this is over on Monday and you get back to your other activities, please continue to use your knowledge and your leadership in your school and in your communities and in your state. We wish you the very best of luck. Thank you and congratulations to you.
Thank you so much for a good presentation. Thank you for taking us back in time up to the Mayflower Compact, going through the Great Compromise, and even tackling today's topics regarding representation for DC and Puerto Rico. So I thank you so much for taking us along on that ride, knowing that this is still something that, even though it was 1787, it still affects us today. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Just to enhance the presentation, just always feel free to include examples. Feel free to include examples, and feel free all to be a part of the answers. When we say one question, it doesn't necessarily one person has to answer it. Other folks could join in as well, because it's a discussion between all of us. And so feel free to do that. But that's just to enhance the presentation. But overall, I thank you so much for this session. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't be able to add much. My colleagues have covered a lot of ground there, but I really enjoyed your presentation. As soon as we got brought in from the breakout room, you guys were smiling, and I could tell you were excited to be here, and that really showed in your presentation today. I very much enjoyed the examples that you gave in your opening statement. I would say, you guys know those, bring those back in the follow-up round, just to kind of boost your arguments a little bit. But, honestly, you guys have thought through this quite a bit. And so just have confidence in that knowledge that you have, because we can tell it's there. So thank you guys so much for your time today. We'll see you tomorrow.